Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here with us this afternoon. Welcome to the first horticulture seminar of our fall horticulture seminar season. I have the privilege today of introducing our speaker, and this is a speaker that I have already seen once before, and she is wonderful. So I'm very excited for all of you to be able to hear from her today. So Abra Lee is our speaker. Abra is a storyteller and author of the forthcoming book, Conquer the Soil, Black America and the Untold Stories of Our Country's Gardeners, Farmers, and Growers. She has spent a whole lot of time in the dirt as a municipal arborist and airport landscape manager, and her work has been featured in media including the New York Times, NPR, Fine Gardening, and Veranda Magazine. She is a graduate of Auburn University, an alumna of the Longwood Garden Society of Fellows, a global network of public horticulture professionals. She's also the director of horticulture at Oakland Cemetary in Atlanta. So I want to welcome Abra and thank you for being here with us today. And thank you everyone else for joining us. And I will hand it over.
Thank you. We're connected when I did a presentation for the International Master Gardeners Conference in Overland Park, Kansas. That was earlier this summer. And when we connected online, we talked about what I may share with y'all today. And what I wanted to share when I found out who would be on the call today, and I found out it would be a mix of students, some of Alicia's colleagues, and also some master gardeners. But I really was really interested because there would be students on this call. So what I'm going to do today is share my journey through horticulture and bring you into the work that I do today. So from where I started to how I got to where I am. And I hope that you will maybe see yourself in this journey, and then at the end of the day, know that whatever the journey is, there will be many hills to climb, many valleys low, but it'll all be okay. So especially to the students. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And then maybe if someone can tell me once they can see the first slide, can y'all see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. Okay. All right, Cyclones. Here we go. All right. So it is about a journey about growing failure into success. So my first big break in horticulture came when I was in my mid-20s, and I was hired as landscape manager for Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the world's busiest airport right here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm in Atlanta today, born and raised here. So I was raised in Atlanta, spent my weekends in the dirt road country in Barnesville, Georgia. And this was a pretty big job. I'm not even going to lie. And it was really because this is an airport that at the time, this was from 2007 to 2012. I remember that there were 250,000 passengers that came through this airport every day. So please don't judge me by the way the landscape looks at the airport today. I haven't been there in over a decade, but it was me dealing with imposter syndrome. That's exactly what I want the students to know from that. So it wasn't, interestingly enough, it wasn't because I was Black or because I was a woman. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, after all. There's a lot of Black affirmation in this town. So it was not that. What it was my age. It was because I was a young person sitting at these tables in my 20s with the head of Southwest or Delta or whatever airline it was, and we're discussing landscape, we're looking at plans, things like that. So I got to tell you, it got to me a little bit. And with that, I also was in charge of a team. I was in charge of a team at the airport, and part of that team, here are two of the people. This is Jason and Deborah Hughes, who were part of my staff in the Department of Aviation. So also being a young leader, I didn't necessarily connect to my staff instantly because I was pretty fresh out of Auburn. I went to Auburn University, majored in horticulture. I think I was 5 years out of school at this time. So I had to find ways to meet my team at their level. And that's the way we're going to start this story today, with the story of Jason and Deborah. So Jason is here in the middle. And one thing that I thought when I started this airport job in horticulture, I said, I'm going to do exactly the way I learned it in Auburn, because it's a horticulture school after all. I know they get it all right. And I would have plant quiz and plant ID, and we would do labs and that type of thing, just really going over the curriculum that we learned down in Auburn, Alabama. the interesting thing here, Jason, you can see how unexcited he is to be taking a test at work over plant ID and Latin names and things like that. So Jason really wasn't vibing with my leadership style, with my work style at the airport. So I knew something had to change to connect with my team members. And so I was sharing this story with my mother, who is here on the left. God rest her soul. She just passed away on July 23rd. I'm sorry, July 3rd of this year. And also, I was sharing the story with my mentor, a gentleman named Ryan Gainey, who's on the right. He was a world-renowned garden designer that lived here in Atlanta, and God bless his soul too. He has also passed on. So I was at Ryan's house one night with my mama, and I said, Ryan, I'm at the airport. My employees, they are nice to me, but I can tell they don't necessarily take me seriously as a leader. Maybe I don't know what I can do. How can I be like you, Ryan? Everybody seems to love you, and you are known over the world, and you speak and you do all these things. And what Ryan told me is that I needed to know my garden history. And so I translated that as, oh, I need to go back and learn, starting with the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and then go forward into the Middle East and look at how Spain influenced California landscapes and all those great things. I just wanted to take a world tour. And my mama, who was there with me that afternoon, said, no, you need to know your history. You need to own your own story and understand where you come from. And when you do that, when you own who you are and what you're doing, you will be able to succeed at this job. Because right now you aren't really owning who you are. And that really resonated with me. That was the first time I really understood about being, I guess, your true self, and not maybe a representative and presenting as if I had all this knowledge, that I was still young. I had the knowledge, but I had so much more to learn it. And, plot tip, maybe not even a plot twist, no surprise, you're going to be learning till the end of your life, which is a good thing, which is a very good thing. So with that, my mama said, remind yourself of who you are. This is me, little Abra Lee. This is me. So I told y'all I grew up in Atlanta, spent my weekends in Barnesville, Georgia, dirt road country, an hour south of Atlanta. And this was on our family's farm. This is the farm my mama grew up on. These are two of my uncles, two of my grandmother's brothers. So I had gone to Auburn and learned wonderful things in horticulture, and also had in some ways been dismissive of the fact that I came from an ag family. And what I mean by that is that when I was at Auburn and I would go back to Barnesville on the weekends, I would say, oh, this isn't a bush, it's a shrub. Or I would correct my great uncles and aunts on what they would call some of these plants. These are folks that grew up on a farm now. They can run circles around me in the garden. But because I had the privilege of education, I was going back trying to tell these elders what's what, which was crazy. Honestly, it's crazy when you say it out loud. And there is room for both. We certainly need formal horticulture education. I needed it. That is why I'm able to speak with you today. And we have to own and embrace and not be dismissive of people in rural settings that certainly have so much knowledge to share with us. So that was part of my mama taking me back, just remembering where I came from. Barnesville, Georgia, you a little Black girl from the South. You got this. It is in your family. It is in your heart to do this. And this is a sidebar. I mentioned this before. I mentioned this a lot of times when I talk. This is a 27-acre piece of land. So not huge, but it's space there. But I just think this picture is so funny because it's good old fashioned Southern porch sitting. It's like 15 people on that porch for no reason at all. And there's all this space outside. But anyway, we talk about Southerners liking to sit on their porch. That's what they mean. We could have been out there by the lake, cow pasture, whatever, but we're crowded. So anyway, I digressed. Let's move on to the next picture. So not only my mama reminded me, at the end of the day, I'm a little Black girl from the South. That's something to be super proud of. My rural roots, my spending the weekdays in the city of Atlanta, this rising mecca of the South at the time, and I would say still very much a thriving city to this day. She also reminded me, look, this farm, your great-grandfather and your great-grandmother who are on the right. This is Shy and Maddie Few on the right, where the picture where the stripes are. Those are my great-grandparents that started this farm. Now, what she also shared with me, which I don't know how I never knew this until that time, is that my great-great-grandmother, who was on the left here, her grandfather raised her, her grandmother raised her. the woman on the left, this is Viney Pugh. She was born into slavery. So the gentleman that raised my grandmother, my grandfather and his wife, his mama was born into slavery. So this is a gentleman who started this farm from nothing. And sometimes we forget, we look at it as such a distant thing, but it's not really as far removed as we would like to think. So she just wanted me to understand that part as well, to understand how hard people had worked and the circumstances that came before me that allowed me the privilege to go to Auburn University and study horticulture. So with that, my great-grandfather, and with that, the privilege of going to Auburn and me being able to connect this to my job at the airport. So this is my great-grandfather's license, Shy Few. What you notice here, and I don't know if y'all can see my arrow, but if you can't, it says his X mark. This is a gentleman who could not read or write. Not a problem, no problem. This man went from nothing to a 27-acre farm to take care of his 7 children and certainly many grandchildren and great-grandchildren, including myself. So what that let me know that even with the formal education I was getting, there's more than one way to learn things. Where he could not read the horticultural books or the Latin words that I was fortunate enough to read during my time, he did understand reading the signs of nature. He could read the environment, Mother Nature, better than anybody. My mama told me that. Now, the other thing I struggled with at the airport, being in these meetings with executives, was imposter syndrome as it relates to creativity and not feeling as I was an artist and I just kind of only understood landscape manuals, which is necessary to understand. And these are my great aunts. These are my uncle's sisters. You saw me standing there with my uncles earlier. Porch is empty this time. So this is Aunt Lois, Aunt Nell, and Aunt Sister, my grandmother's sisters. And I looked at myself as someone who wasn't a creative. And my mother said, well, how could you say that? Because your aunts hand stitched quilts from scratch. They were master seamstress. They were master cooks. They were incredible at everything they did. The clothes that they're wearing, they made. So you do have it in you to be creative and be artistic. It is in you. You don't have to just feel like you're lacking in that area. So this is what I needed to hear. I needed those things to help deal with my imposter syndrome. And these are some of the beautiful quilts that my aunts have made over the years, my great aunts, my grandmother's sisters, and I have probably about 40 or 50 of these in my house, if you can believe it. They're stunning and real. I ought to do a quilt exhibit whenever I get out of the horticulture game, y'all. I think a museum would really actually like that. So with that, back to Jason. So I go back to work. This is a few months later. I'm processing all these amazing things I'm feeling now. My ancestor spirit is in me. I'm hyped to go back to Jason and say, Jason, if you could do anything in the world and not have to be here with me at the airport every day on this horticulture journey, what would you do? And Jason told me, well, I really like baseball. I always wanted to be a baseball player. My son is just born. I'm going to have him playing baseball. And with that, I said, aha, it was a connection for me. And that connection was baseball players read the signs when they're out there behind home plate and at the pitcher's mound. They're reading signs to each other. They're not looking at the book per se. And I knew that I was able to share that with Jason and connect to my grandfather. Where,
well, let
Jason,
me see the video,
you may not enjoy taking these tests, but what I can show you is that everything doesn't have to be on paper. You can read the signs of nature. So now Jason and I are on the same page. He is out there not just enjoying his work, but looking for the signs, looking for what Shy Few would have looked for. It wasn't about giving him book work all the time. Now with that, Jason started feeling himself, which I love. He was really into it. Now he's reading the signs of nature, showing it to his team members there. He's taking what he knows and sharing that knowledge forward, which is what we want any team members to do. And that is all because my mom reminded me, own who I am and where I come from. Now with Deborah, this is a woman where, again, me following the book of Auburn, I had learned some things about floriculture design. I had been on a floriculture crew as an intern working on estates, and I was showing her the way that I knew to do garden design. And I don't consider myself a designer at all. I'm certainly not. But in good faith, Deborah was incredible. She wasn't Jason. She was willing to do the work. And with that, she was very much learning and following bookshelf design, which I was showing her. Now, one thing I want to point out, and it's going to relate to the story of Deborah. Deborah has two different hairstyles in this picture. This picture was taken within about the same week. She would always come to work with different designs on her nails. Her car color paint might change every few months. And I was like, you know, this person really has a sense of style, but I was not utilizing that because I was so focused on bookshelf design. So this is one of Deborah's floriculture designs. Now, y'all, this is the mid of early aughts of the 2000s. So things would be a lot different now. But again, blocks the color. We're at an airport. People need to be able to see this from 10,000 feet above. So very bright. It's not that it's bad, but it did what it needed to do. But it was also not really capitalizing on Deborah's talent. And so what I mean by that, I said, Deborah, look, I see the way you come in here. I see how stylish you are. I see on your birthday, you come in here wearing a queen crown. You have such a air of just being flamboyant and jubilant about yourself. What would you do if you just didn't follow my instructions and did your own way? Now, my instructions were to follow the book of design, the formula, the recipes that we all learn in school. Deborah was more like my Aunt Lois, my Aunt Nell, Aunt Sister. Hand stitched quilt, wasn't no pattern there. They just cutting it out. They're cutting out old clothes piece by piece, stitching it together. That was Deborah. She just had it in her mind. She had the vision in her mind, not necessarily something she could show me on paper. So I said, Deborah, you don't have to show me on paper ahead of time. Just put it in the ground. Show me what you would do. And this is what she did. This is what she did. You see the difference of me coaching her through the right way of Auburn or wherever horticulture school versus saying, show me your way when you can feel it. So again, there's many ways to meet people at through horticulture. And with Deborah's way, we went from the designs we were doing to an award-winning floriculture program at the airport, Atlanta's airport at the time. We won a state award for that work. So this is what I wanted to share with y'all about just meeting people where they are with the case of Deborah and Jason through my work at the airport. We also went on to design a floral clock. And here you see Deborah working with the team there to install it. It is no longer at Atlanta's airport, but as we know, things are ephemeral in the landscape. Designs are ephemeral in the landscape. And after this was put in, I remember thinking, well, I surely probably can't top this. This was a 17-foot floral clock, LED lighting, beautiful at the time. You could see it at night from the sky. And I ended up leaving the Atlanta airport and going to Houston, Texas to be the landscape manager at Bush Airport for a few years down there. But Deborah went from the books with Jason and me and Deborah to at the end of her, or at least at the end of my time at the airport, installing a floral clock. Who knew? So you just don't know where your journey is going to take you. I certainly wasn't never expecting that about myself, but if our team can install a floral clock, anybody can, believe that. And these were the other members of Marsha and Omni as well, who helped with that. Now, the work that Alicia met me through was when I was at the conference there in Kansas, talking about Black, what I call love stories. Most people know my work through Black garden history, but I call it love stories, and I call it that for a reason. So I showed you my mama, and she is a retired educator. She was a retired educator. So she was very much insistent that I understood and learned my history, not just from the textbooks, but from my own family, which you saw there. So I would be proud of the steps that I had come from. So I wanted to share a little bit about y'all's history today, Iowa State, because you got some top tier Black garden history, AKA love stories in your canon. And some of y'all on this call probably recognize everybody I talk about that today. Some of y'all may not know some of these people, but we're going to start here with Malcolm Stubblefield, Sioux City, Iowa's finest, goes to Iowa State University, majors in landscape gardening, and eventually makes his way to New York. And this is a clipping from a paper called The New York Age, which is a Black publication that was in the early 1910s, 1920s, late 1800s in New York. It was a paper founded by a gentleman named T. Thomas Fortune, who was a good friend and colleague of Booker T. Washington, who goes on to found Tuskegee. And we already know the Tuskegee story with George Washington Carver in Iowa State and coming down there and just owning the game. But back to Mr. Stubblefield here. This is why it's important to record and tell your own story. This document is from a Black newspaper, 1938, this is published. So for 3 years, he had been in New York Botanic Garden. If you go to the New York Botanic Garden, look in their archives, there's no record of Malcolm Stubblefield. Now I got to tell y'all something. It's a heck of a lie to go all the way to New York, Harlem adjacent, Brooklyn adjacent in the 1930s and lie about your role as a landscaper, as a gardener. So we know that two things can be true at one time. It just means that the garden likely never recorded his story, even though they do have other documentation of people who were there at the time. So this is why it is very important to keep your own records and do that. And Malcolm Stubblefield, I was able to speak to his son, who remembers Malcolm Stubblefield didn't even pass away, y'all, to the early 1980s. So we could have talked to him. Somebody could have talked to him, right? But we have to learn this story through the papers now. But it is very exciting to know that our Iowa State Cyclone was responsible for 3 years of the New York Botanic Gardens' beautiful, beautiful landscape. And I have a wonderful relationship with NYBG, by the way, but I do want to point that out. And they even own that, hey, two things can be true. Just because we don't have it on record doesn't mean it's not true. Another person to your left, Mr. James N. Freeman, Dr. James N. Freeman. Why did I say Mr.? And by to the left, I mean the gentleman in the pink. So this is a gentleman born in Kansas. He's a Jayhawker and attends Hampton University, the HBCU, Historically Black College and University in Hampton, Virginia, in the Hampton Roads area, gets his master's from Iowa State University, and then goes on to Cornell to get his PhD. And so he leads the horticulture program at Lincoln University in Missouri for many, many, many years, makes it his life's work, and has the foresight to hire this gentleman on the right, who is named Charles Dickinson. Charles Dickinson is from Columbus, Ohio, attends Ohio State University. His father is very active in the NAACP, and Charles Dickinson is the first Black man to be admitted to the American Society of Landscape Architecture. He goes on to become a landscape architect. Now, Charles Dickinson worked at Tuskegee. He worked at many of the HBCUs, but the pinnacle of his career was at Lincoln University in your neighboring Midwestern state there in Missouri. Charles Dickinson on the right was also a PhD in floriculture, so flowers meant a lot to him. And he was also a huge advocate for young Black men to join this profession of landscape architecture because he saw the importance of it. And he saw that landscape architecture brought together many disciplines, where you brought together engineering, you brought together math, you brought together art. And that is what James N. Freeman saw in Charles Dickinson. And he said, no man has done for the campus of Lincoln University what Charles Dickinson has done, and no man will ever be able to do this. Now, with Charles Dickinson, though he advocates for landscape architecture for the students there, they are a dream team at Lincoln University, these two gentlemen. Dickinson does pass away fairly young. He's in his 50s when he passes away suddenly of, I believe, what was a heart attack then. I'm only sharing that because sometimes you say, well, why have I never heard of Charles Dickinson? Yes, he's an Ohio State grad. And I tend to not even share most of the times the I don't want to say the sad part of anyone's life, because I don't want to be people to be remembered for the worst day of their life, right? This was a person that passed away young. He didn't know that, but his contributions, Dickinson's contributions to landscape architecture and his impact are felt nevertheless. And James N. Freeman, his contributions to American agriculture, there is a building named at Lincoln University to this day after James N. Freeman, who's one of y'all. So how about that? That's pretty exciting. So we're going to move on. Though this is a woman named Lillian Edmonds, she is not from Iowa State. I don't know if she falls on the Cyclone or the Hawkeye side. Fun fact, my sweetheart, Chris, he is a Hawkeye, y'all. He is a graduate at the University of Iowa. But what do I care? I'm an Auburn Tiger. But I share that because Lillian Edmonds was in Des Moines, Iowa. She's born in Alabama, comes up to New York, is a nurse by training up there. And she and her husband eventually make their way to Des Moines. But in Des Moines, she is unable to find work as a nurse. And so she moves forward with her work in the community and eventually does things like start a community center for Black, can I say Des Moinians? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I think y'all know what I'm trying to say. The Black people of Des Moines. And has this community center, has a garden club, has meetings there as well. I'm not trying to minimize her contribution to a garden club, but she is very impactful in the community. They have community gardens there. And Lillian Edmonds is so influential in the community during the time, not just through our community work, but through our garden work, there's a school, a children's elementary school named Edmonds. It is named after her, and she is in the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame. So her impact is felt through the world of horticulture in Iowa. Yeah, we can write a book on this, just on the state of Iowa. Isn't this exciting? And I'm leaving people out in the interest of time because I want to share some more with y'all today. And who could forget the Stepps? Actress Addie and Lottie Stepp. And I'm going to read a quote from Lottie Stepp. So these are the famed melon farmers from Fayette County up there in Iowa. Melon, cantaloupes, other melons, and certainly watermelons. And they do have a real connection to Iowa State. Lottie Stepp says this. I think this is one of the funniest quotes I ever read from a person. Lottie Stepp, who is the woman pictured in this picture, actress or Addie Stepp is the gentleman that's on the left. His father started this watermelon farm in 1876. This picture is taken in 1989. And at that point, Addie Stepp was in his 90s. He and his wife had been married for 63 years. And the interviewer says, well, how do you know how to choose a cantaloupe? And she says, squeeze the cantaloupe the way you like your husband to squeeze the neighbor's wife. So I think that's quite lightly, just give them a nice little friendly hug, not too tight. And that's how you know you got a good melon in your hand. And this is why I love the wisdom of people in rural communities. Like I would have probably given my long drawn out Auburn answer to my team. And now I can't unsee that answer, Lottie Stepp. I go in every grocery store and I know just gently with my cantaloupe there, gently with my melon, gentle squeeze there. With the Stepps, this is a watermelon farm that in the 1950s and 60s was 360 something acres. It is no longer within the family today. But the impact here is that in the 1980s, Iowa State works with the Stepps and sends seedless watermelon seeds to the Stepps. They grow them on a farm. Addie Stepp is suspicious, but he also owns that when the fruit comes to harvest time, that it is delicious fruit. And he also had about 45 beehives out there as well. So products from Iowa State, produce, the melons, the new hybrids of melons were sent from Iowa State and Ames up to the Stepp farm to be tested. So delicious and certainly a fun connection. And then everything isn't about the past. This is Drek Wilson. Some of y'all know him. He is alive today. This is a legendary, a living legend, landscape architect. He wrote this book on African-American architects. He went on, he is a graduate of Iowa State University. He went on to lead and teach in the architecture program at Howard University, the HBCU, Historically Black College and University in DC, and also teach landscape architecture at Morgan State University. So another amazing cyclone that y'all can be proud of. And we could, y'all look, he could be on your speaker series if he hasn't already been there, but maybe he has. And I'm sure he could come back again. So Drek Spurlock Wilson, who I've never met in person. We have had phone conversations. We have had emails. I look forward to us meeting in person for sure. And this book is an incredible book, by the way. He lists so many of the famed Black architects and landscape architects in America. So y'all got something to be very proud of as with Drek Wilson being a cyclone as well. So to my students, my journey. I am always reinventing myself. So I started in Auburn, started in a greenhouse working as a student. Then I moved on to come back home to Atlanta. I'm a landscaper. Nothing wrong with that. Commercial landscaping, that's what I learned how to do. Then I get the job as an arborist with the Parks Department of the City of Atlanta. Then I go into the airport business, which changes the game for me. Move down to Houston, Texas, and then I come back to Atlanta and work in extension. I do that for 2 years, and I'm like, I still know it's something else I want to do. Lord, if you hear my cry, I really want to work in another country. And lo and behold, I was on Twitter one night, which is no longer called Twitter, but that's a side story to that. And the fellowship application for Longwood Gardens comes up. So I apply. And then I get called for an interview. And then I get hired. And I can't believe it. And part of this job, though, it is a 13-month leadership in public horticulture fellowship. So they are preparing you to be an executive director or director of horticulture or lead a garden. That is what is preparing you for. Part of this job is that they send you on a field placement. So my prayers were answered. I got sent to Chateau Villandry in the Loire Valley of France. And I got to work at the world's most beautiful vegetable garden for about 6 weeks. And then COVID came and stole my joy from me. I had to go back home. But the point of the story is this. I really, really thought that I just was going to be a director of horticulture, just like Sharon Loving, who is the vice president of horticulture at Longwood, an amazing mentor to me. But when I was at V. Landry, I was sharing the stories I just shared with y'all. And I just gave you a taste of legendary people from Iowa State with Henri Carvalho. He was like, what interests you about horticulture? I was like, well, I ain't the world's greatest plants woman, but I do have some good stories to tell. And he said to me, you know, Abra, you'd be really good at exhibition work. So it was really me understanding that my purpose wasn't necessarily plant related. You see, I struggled with Jason and Deborah, but you can find your lane in horticulture. And sometimes your lane isn't what you think it is. I'm right over there struggling with that French garden tool, which has a really beautiful name. I can't even say in English, but still, I was a better storyteller and exhibitionist. I was better at that in the world of horticulture. And so my career shifted. And here you see me in the middle. I've come back from Longwood. I started my own company and I did research, writing, and speaking around Black garden history, these love stories in the garden. So with that, Auburn University, my old alma mater, catches wind of the work that I'm doing. Now, owning your story. What I didn't tell y'all at the top of this conversation is that I was a not great student at Auburn. I know all of y'all who are students on here were way better than me. I am a young lady that failed out of Auburn University and had to go back, was put on academic suspension, kicked out of there for 6 months and had to go back. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't out there partying. I can own that. I wasn't doing that. I really was dealing with depression when I was in college. It was just a new world for me. I just couldn't understand my life in my 20s and why all my other friends seemed to have things figured out. They were going to be doctor, lawyers, engineers, and I was in horticulture, kind of feeling down about it, not really saying, did I miss it somewhere? Because everybody else seems to be going down this path of something that's familiar. When I come to the dinner party talking about I was going to be a horticulturist, nobody wanted to talk about it. Now, young people, that was in 2000. Now you are the toast of the town if you were in agriculture or horticulture. It is your moment. We are in a renaissance of the horticulture world, so you can be proud of it. But there was a day we weren't the exciting people in the room, but that day is no more. So with that, full circle moment, young people, Auburn is aware of the work that I'm doing. They are aware of me being out here nationally, internationally speaking about American garden stories, and they invite me back to teach a course to the Masters of Landscape Architecture students in Black garden history. This is me and the Associate Professor David Hill's got his hand on my shoulder right there. I'm in the turquoise pants. And these are my 9 students, or some of the 9. It's not 9 people in that picture. The dynamic 9, as I called them. And as part of this course in Black garden history, we were invited to present at the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society Flower Show, the PHS Flower Show, right here in the corner here. This is a show that 250,000 people attend every year in Philadelphia. It is the oldest flower show in the United States, and I think that in 2 years, it'll be 200 years old. Now, why is this important? I taught the Dynamic 9. These are 9 non-Black students in Alabama. And what we decided to do for that show, the theme that year was In Bloom. We decided to share the story of a woman named Effie Lee Newsom. This is a Black woman, a Harlem Renaissance writer who wrote a book on children's nature poetry, and she publishes it in 1944. So we based the garden off the work of Effie Lee Newsom for 2 reasons. Number one, I needed my students to believe it. People got to believe what you're exhibiting and presenting to them. Effie Lee Newsom spent a good portion of her adult life in Alabama. She was married and lived in Birmingham. She lived in Montgomery. Her mom was from Mobile. So these 9 students, many of them with roots and ties to southeastern United States, could see themselves in her. Some of them were even from Birmingham, but regardless, the Alabama connection, y'all going to school in Alabama, she's lived in Alabama, you've seen some of these same roads, they're connected. So where they may not be connected by culture, they're not a Black woman, they were connected by Alabama. Another reason, Effie Lee Newsom was born in Philadelphia. We wanted it to connect to the people attending the show overwhelmingly. Though people from all over the world come to this show, we wanted the local community to care. So that is a way that you can tell a story without feeling like it's cultural appropriation, or maybe you're not locking in. Just find that real connection to the people. And my alarm just went off just to let me know I got about 10 minutes. So we're going to make it through. Don't worry. But I just wanted to hit that off. So Effie Lee Newsom and her incredible story, Gladiola Garden. I could literally talk about her for an hour, but we're going to go forward. This is what the Dynamic Nine came up with. So what they did is that they created these viewfinders, these landscape architecture students. Some of them had an undergrad degree in horticulture. And we put the poems of F.E. Newsome, they did, not we, on these viewfinders. And what it means is that when people look through these open squares, they can see her poetry work within the flowers. These are two people attending the show. And this is what you would see if you were looking through the viewfinder. So this is from her poem, Gladiola Garden. A little girl, a little boy, in gardens of much shades, much joy, and gardens of mixed shades, much joy. One really has to think of you, for you are many colors too. F.E. Newsome is referencing the light skin, dark skin, medium brown, the many shades of brown to the many shades of a gladiola. And so she's comparing the color of Black and brown children to only can be matched by the color of nature, just that range there. So just a really beautiful poet, artist, naturalist, wonderful person. And then this is another woman who bent down a little closer to read some of the poems in the work. And you can see the poem there on the back of the viewfinder. Now, why is this exciting? Because Abra Lee, who failed out of Auburn, came back. I only have a bachelor's, y'all. I knew I couldn't make it through a master's and a PhD in my dreams, maybe one day. But we go up there and we win 5 awards, including a gold medal. This was in June of 2022, y'all. This was a little over a year ago. This is Trey and Alex and Taylor standing right next to me. And we won a gold medal, especially for the design work that these landscape architecture students did. We ran up there like it was the Price is Right when they called our name. We were just hype about it. It was so, so exciting. So you can connect to people. You have to find the love in it. That's why I talk about love stories. We were able to connect F.E. Newsome to 250,000 people that attend that show. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. So you never know where the horticulture journey is going to take you. And no school from the South had ever even been invited to present in this show in 200 years. So look at Auburn, my alma mater, going up there being winners. And I got to tell you, students, it feels good to win. In that tent you see us in, they're passing out champagne, the good hors d'oeuvres, right? You love it. You love to see it. It is okay to want to feel good and be rewarded for your work. Nothing wrong with that at all. But the story continues. My exhibition work is not just only on Black garden history. It is also on me understanding culture and what's important. And just on August 11th, we just had the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And with that, last year in September, I had met a woman named Talia Boone back in 2021. I'll show you her picture shortly. And we dreamed up this idea of having an exhibition called Music and Flowers. And we envisioned it like Cirque du Soleil, and we could tour it around botanical gardens all over the country. And what we wanted to bring together was music and flowers. Music is a tool of communication, as are flowers. You can express joy, grief, sympathy, all kind of feelings through flowers, and that is what music does as well. And so we pitched this idea to the South Coast Botanic Garden in Palos Verdes, California, and they said, let's do it. And these pictures behind you are of some actual people who were either part of or attended Music and Flowers. And this is Talia Boone, who is my business partner with Music and Flowers, and we are very close to signing on to a city for 2025. I don't think I can publicly say out loud what that city is, but our meeting is in 2 weeks. So if y'all want to follow up with me in 2 weeks, know the city, I'll be happy to tell you. So with that, we created an experience. These are some of the people that attended that day. This is amazing. So it's interesting because there is a push and a need, and an understandable one, for people to want to bring all type of multi-generational, multicultural, multi-genders together. And that is what we were able to do, because we were able to marry two things that were of interest: music and flowers. Who don't like music and flowers? Who? Everybody does. And so it was a wonderful event. Y'all want to bring it to Iowa? We are certainly happy to have that conversation. And that is what we did on this day. So with that, it was a situation where rhythm meets blooms, and we connected community. So there was yoga, there was wellness. That is a part of horticulture as well. The wellness part, the mental health part of horticulture. And there were amazing, amazing people who were able to attend. It was a fun day in LA. And with that, these are some of the people that we hired to do the work. This is Nia. When you entered the garden, she wanted to reproduce the LA vibe. Nia, born and raised in LA. So you see the Hollywood side behind her, the Los Angeles graffiti, the high level of palms. That's like a palm I think they call it a step and repeat is what you call that. So that is how people enter the garden on the green carpet. We hired Black women florists from Los Angeles or the California area to put this together. Then we wanted to make sure that we highlighted hip hop in the 90s. So it's not a lot of gardens you go in and see a picture of Tupac and Dr. Dre, old school. That's a Kendrick Lamar album cover as well. It can be done, y'all. Anything can happen in horticulture. So it is important to understand, at least I see a path forward in horticulture when you marry the culture to horticulture. I think that is an amazing way to do that. And it resonated with people. Fashion. Phipps Conservatory up there in Pittsburgh. I think they've just ended the exhibition on the fashion of Billy Porter. If you haven't seen it, Google it. It is incredible. I flew up to Phipps to see it myself. So there are many ways to marry your talents. And it's nothing wrong with farming or landscaping. I'm just showing you that there's many paths you can travel. And then finally, there was Kristen here. Ashley did the fashion. Kristen created what she wanted to represent was the crates, how DJs used to bring their crates around back in the day. Records. Nobody was doing this on their phone, right? And she decorated that with flowers. So that was a really Instagrammable moment for this. And we had several thousand people show up, which was pretty cool. Not 250,000, more like 2, but still, that was really, really fun. And then Amaret Brooms, who did this lowrider infused with flowers. So that was super exciting to see that we had gone, or I have gone from airports to failing out of school to lowriders and cars in a botanical garden in Los Angeles. And with that, it is about being able to, it's not your setback, it's your comeback. And I'll end with that. You'll see it on my last slide. But yes, did I fail out of college? Did I get back up on that pony? I sure did. And where has it gotten me? It has gotten me to write for Fine Gardening, to be featured in Veranda, to have a segment on NPR. I've been able to write for the New York Times. So the road can take you many places. Just continue to try new things out. And maybe you're good at that one thing. I'm the type of person, it took me into my darn near second decade in horticulture to really understand what my purpose was. But once I found it, I was able to own that. And when all those pieces come together, it will make your job and your career so much easier for you and exciting. Which brings us to my last stop. This is my day job. This is me on the left. Look at Longwood. I ended up being a director of horticulture after all. So I still have my company, Conquer the Soil, where I do research, writing, and speaking around the country on the love stories of horticulture. And this is my team at Oakland Cemetary. And Oakland Cemetary is a beautiful Victorian garden cemetery in downtown Atlanta. And that is why you see the downtown Atlanta skyline right there, because it is 1 mile from the state capitol. It is a 48-acre cemetery there. So with that, I can't take credit for any of this beautiful horticultural work. I say Victorian Garden Cemetery because it was built in 1850. So everything in there is not a native plant. Matter of fact, most things aren't. There are some things we're transitioning, and we want to honor history, but also move the plant palettes forward. So this is the work that I started with Oakland in January of this year, in January of 2022. And what's important there is that I was doing work in the history and garden lane. And if you go to oaklandcemetery.com, the mission is history and gardens. So if you can merge your passion with the mission of the place you're working, that's going to be a wonderful natural fit for you. And a few more scenes of Oakland Cemetery. A tornado took out the head of this monument here on this young grave, but it looks really cool. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It is a City of Atlanta park as well. So we service everyone from the affluent to the homeless, and people buried there are from the famous to the unknown. So we welcome you. I will welcome you at Oakland Cemetery with open arms anytime if you ever want to stop by. And with that, I'm going to show you this last picture so you get a feel for what I get to do. Can y'all believe I work here every day? It really is incredible, because I got to tell you, I never would have thought a million years ago in 2002 when I came out of Auburn, I would ever end up being director of horticulture at a cemetery. My professors didn't discuss that with me. I didn't discuss that with me because I didn't know there was an option. I didn't know that was a career path, but I am glad and so fortunate to be there every day. And with that, I'm just going to hit the takeaways. Own your story, own who you are. There's nothing to be ashamed of. But if you own it, you get out in front of it, just like me and my failures. Then let me see if I can get to the next part. It's not just your setback in life, it's how you come back. So how you come back. We're going to all hit bumps in the road, y'all. Don't worry about that. Students, you're going to be okay. Just come back bigger and better. And you're going to hit a bunch of setbacks. I've been fired from a job before, actually twice when I was a student, even in my adult life, and it's fine. You're going to be fine. It hurts your feelings in the moment, believe me, for a very long time. And you're going to come back, so you can be okay. Meet people where they are, like I did with Jason and Deborah. And the art of reinvention. I started in a greenhouse. Look at me now, in a cemetery. Who knew? So you can continually reinvent yourself, or you can be wonderful at one thing like my great-grandfather Shafu was. And then finally, if you can blend your purpose with the mission of where you're working, it'll be a natural fit. And so with that, I think it's 12:50 Central Time. I thank you for your time, and I am going to turn it back over to Alicia in case y'all have any questions. Thank y'all so much.